There is a wisdom that every learner must carry. A wisdom not found in the pages of textbooks, but in the quiet moments when truth speaks softly to the heart. The journey of a student is not merely a passage through classrooms, but a pilgrimage toward light. The world often tells you that knowledge is power, but knowledge alone is hollow unless it teaches you how to live, how to hope, and how to stand firm when all else falls away. You must remember that curiosity is not a weakness, it is the beginning of all discovery. The child who asks, "Why?" is already wiser than the man who accepts everything without question. Do not fear to wonder, to doubt, to dig deeper into what others overlook. The mind that questions, even in uncertainty, is already learning the language of truth. Every question you ask brings you closer to who you are meant to become. Education is not a prison of rules, but a garden where ideas grow when tended with care and courage. Do not seek knowledge only for grades or titles, for these are shadows that fade with time. Seek knowledge that strengthens the soul. What use is brilliance if it lacks compassion? What use is intellect if it forgets humanity? The purpose of learning is not to rise above others, but to rise above ignorance, fear, and selfishness. A true student studies to serve truth, beauty, and the good that lifts others higher. There will be days when your efforts seem to crumble, when lessons confuse you, when failures mock you, and when progress feels too slow. Yet, remember this: a seed buried in darkness does not die. It waits, it endures, it grows in silence until the moment it breaks the ground to meet the light. So too must you endure the unseen seasons of struggle. The test of a student is not how quickly they understand, but how patiently they persist. The nights of frustration are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of your strength. Imagination is the breath of learning. To imagine is to see what does not yet exist, and to believe it can. Logic may show you what is, but imagination reveals what could be. The mind without imagination is like a lamp without flame, capable but cold. Let your studies feed not only your reason but your wonder. Dream beyond the syllabus, think beyond the exam, and see every subject as a window into the vastness of creation. For knowledge is not meant to trap you within boundaries, but to free you into endless discovery. True education does not end with the closing of a book or the ringing of a bell. It is a lifelong companionship. Every experience teaches, every mistake instructs, every success refines. The purpose of learning is not to gather facts, but to build the inner strength to use them wisely. You are not learning to impress the world, but to understand your part in it, to discern truth from illusion, to choose right over easy, and to walk with humility even when you stand among the learned. Remember this: above all, greatness begins in the small acts of discipline. Honesty and faithfulness you show each day. The most brilliant minds are not those who shine the brightest, but those who stay lit the longest. Do not rush to finish your journey, grow through it. Every chapter of learning, whether joyful or painful, adds another color to the painting of your character. So, as you walk the halls of learning, carry within you the courage to question, the strength to endure, and the imagination to see the unseen. Knowledge will fill your mind, but wisdom, if you seek it humbly, will shape your soul. And that is the education that no test, no failure, no time can ever take away. Curiosity is the pulse of the mind. It is the sacred hunger that drives the soul toward truth. Every student begins their journey with a spark, a simple question that asks, why? That question, though small, contains within it the seed of every discovery humanity has ever made. The tragedy of modern learning is that this spark often fades beneath the weight of routine, expectations, and the fear of being wrong. Yet true education does not begin when we receive answers. It begins when we dare to ask. The mind that is curious refuses to accept the surface of things. It longs to uncover the hidden meaning beneath. It is not satisfied with memorization, because memorization collects, but curiosity creates. It is the difference between storing light and becoming light. The student who preserves curiosity becomes a seeker rather than a spectator. They see learning not as a task but as an adventure. The world, for them, is no longer a dull place of repetition, but an endless field of discovery. Every subject becomes alive when viewed through the eyes of wonder. Mathematics becomes the language of order. Literature becomes the echo of human experience, and science becomes the poetry of creation. Such a student does not study because they must, but because they cannot help themselves. They are driven by a desire to understand, not by the demand to perform. Their curiosity becomes the teacher, guiding them far beyond the walls of the classroom. The world itself becomes a living book, each experience a paragraph, each moment a lesson. Curiosity also teaches humility. The one who asks admits they do not know, and in that admission they open the door to growth. Pride is the enemy of learning because it pretends to already understand, but the curious heart says, "Teach me more." It bows before knowledge, not as a servant, but as a lover of truth. Such humility transforms confusion into an opportunity rather than a weakness. When a student embraces curiosity, mistakes no longer shame them, they shape them. Questions no longer intimidate, they invite deeper thought. Failure ceases to be a barrier and becomes a bridge to understanding. The curious student does not measure their progress by grades, but by insight, by the widening of the horizon of their thought. A mind that remains curious is alive. It resists the dullness of conformity and the silence of complacency. Curiosity is rebellion against ignorance, yet it is a gentle rebellion. One fought not with arrogance but with wonder. It whispers to the student, there is more to see, more to learn, more to become. It turns boredom into exploration and routine into discovery. Even the smallest moments become valuable when curiosity is present. A bird in flight becomes a lesson in physics. A line of poetry becomes a window into human emotion. A historical event becomes a mirror reflecting today's choices. When one learns to see in this way, the world no longer feels divided between study and life. They become one and the same. The power of curiosity also lies in its endurance. Excitement fades, discipline sometimes wanes, but curiosity, once awakened, sustains learning through every obstacle. A curious student does not quit easily, for they are driven by an inner need to know. Even when the path of understanding grows difficult, curiosity compels them to continue. It whispers, just one more step, and you will see. And when they do, the satisfaction is not in the grade or recognition, but in the illumination of the mind. That quiet moment when something that was once dark becomes clear. This joy of discovery is the purest reward of learning. It cannot be given, it must be earned through questioning, searching, and patience. Curiosity also connects knowledge across boundaries. The curious mind does not isolate subjects, it weaves them together. It sees how history influences literature, how science shapes philosophy, how art mirrors psychology. Such a mind does not see division between useful and useless studies. To the curious, all knowledge is sacred, for each truth reveals a fragment of something greater. This is the essence of intellectual maturity, to see the unity behind the diversity of learning. When curiosity governs study, a student no longer seeks to master a subject, but to understand the world as a living whole. They begin to sense that every idea, however small, contributes to a larger truth. But curiosity requires courage. It demands that one step beyond the comfort of certainty and risk the unknown. To ask deep questions is to risk unsettling answers. Many fear this and choose instead to remain silent. Yet every breakthrough in thought has come from the bravery of someone who refused to stop asking. Curiosity and courage are companions. One dreams, the other dares. Together they turn the ordinary learner into an explorer of ideas. A student who lives this way becomes free, for they no longer depend on external approval. Their reward is not in being told they are right, but in the joy of seeking what is true. Nurturing curiosity requires an inner discipline. The discipline to keep the mind awake, even when the world tries to put it to sleep. This means approaching every day of study as a chance to see something new. It means treating even familiar topics as unexplored territories. It means asking not only, "What is this?" but "Why does it matter?" and "What can I do with this understanding?" Such questions turn knowledge into wisdom. They prevent learning from becoming mechanical. A student who keeps asking these questions keeps their soul young. Curiosity, then, is not only the beginning of education, it is the breath that sustains it. In the end, the most powerful minds are not those filled with answers, but those still alive with questions. The truest scholars are not those who know everything, but those who never stop wondering. Curiosity makes the student a lifelong learner, one who continues to grow long after the classroom is gone. It lights a fire that no failure can extinguish and no success can fully satisfy. Once that fire burns within, learning ceases to be a duty. It becomes a calling, a joy, a way of life. The courage to think differently is the beginning of all true education. It is the moment when a student stops echoing the thoughts of others and begins to listen to the quiet voice of their own reason. Every great thinker, every reformer, every innovator began as a student who dared to question what was accepted. To think differently is not merely to disagree. It is to see from a new angle, to ask whether the familiar might be incomplete. The world is often unkind to original thought. It rewards conformity and praises obedience. Yet it is the courage to think for oneself that changes the course of history. The student who dares to think differently does not merely learn from books. They learn from the depths of life itself. They understand that truth is not always found in the loudest voice, but sometimes in the quiet conviction that refuses to bend. This courage does not come easily. To think differently is to risk misunderstanding, isolation, and sometimes ridicule. But every time a student chooses to express an idea that challenges the comfort of others, they grow stronger. Thinking differently is not rebellion for the sake of pride. It is the pursuit of truth above approval. The greatest danger in learning is not ignorance but imitation. To accept ideas without testing them, to repeat the thoughts of others without asking if they are true. The classroom should be a place of awakening, not a workshop of agreement. A real student questions not because they are arrogant, but because they value truth enough to search for it themselves. It takes courage to say, "I see it differently," when the rest of the class nods in unison. Yet in that courage lies the seed of genuine wisdom. Independent thinking begins with honesty. It requires one to face their own uncertainty and still move forward. To think for oneself is to take responsibility for one's own understanding. It means admitting, "I may be wrong," and yet daring to seek what is right. This humility guards the thinker from arrogance, even as they grow in confidence. A courageous mind does not destroy the thoughts of others, but examines them, refines them, and, when necessary, transforms them. It respects tradition but is not enslaved by it. It listens but does not surrender its judgment. Such a student does not merely consume information. They digest it, question it, and allow it to shape them with intention. They do not memorize answers, they create meaning. And though this path is often harder, it is the only one that leads to wisdom. There is a quiet heroism in every student who stands firm in their conviction when surrounded by opposing voices. The world will often prefer agreement over authenticity. Yet progress, whether scientific, moral, or spiritual, has always depended on those who refuse to bow to the tyranny of sameness. The thinker who dares to question awakens others who have forgotten how. This is why courage in thought is not an act of pride, but an act of service. When one student refuses to follow blind convention, they remind everyone else that truth is not decided by majority vote. It is discovered through courage, patience, and integrity. Every new idea that has ever changed the world was once mocked, resisted, or ignored, until courage turned doubt into discovery. But to think differently also requires discipline. Courage without wisdom becomes chaos. The truly brave thinker is not reckless. They are deliberate. They know that every idea must be tested against reason, experience, and compassion. It is not enough to oppose. One must understand. The student who thinks differently must learn to listen deeply, to weigh every idea carefully, and to stand firm only when their heart and mind are in harmony. They must learn that disagreement is not disrespect, that questioning is not rebellion, and that the search for truth must always be guided by humility. In this balance, courage finds its highest form. The strength to be original without being arrogant, to stand apart without standing above. The courage to think differently also shapes character. It trains the soul to live truthfully, even when it is inconvenient. The one who learns to think independently in study will one day act independently in life. They will not be swayed by empty popularity or fear of rejection. They will make choices guided by principle, not pressure. This is why education that only teaches obedience fails to prepare the heart for real living. A mind that has never learned to question will be enslaved by the opinions of others. But the student who has practiced thinking courageously will remain free, for they have learned that truth is worth the loneliness it sometimes brings. Their courage becomes a light for others still afraid to speak their minds. Every era needs thinkers who are unafraid to challenge the assumptions of their time. Yet this courage must be born from love. Love for truth, for goodness, and for the betterment of all. The student who thinks differently out of pride divides. The one who does so out of sincerity unites. The motive behind thought defines its worth. Thinking differently is not about proving others wrong, but about helping the world see more clearly. It is a service to knowledge and a gift to humanity. The world's progress has always depended on such learners, those who refused to accept the easy answers and instead sought the honest ones, no matter how uncomfortable they might be. To nurture this courage, a student must learn to trust their inner voice, that quiet whisper that says, "Something here deserves a closer look." They must not silence it out of fear of ridicule. They must allow it to grow through reading, reflection, and contemplation. Every new perspective begins as a fragile thought. If it is ignored, it dies. If it is nourished, it becomes the foundation of understanding. Teachers and mentors serve best not by giving all the answers, but by awakening the questions that live within each student. When a student learns to think differently with honesty, humility, and courage, they do not merely grow intellectually. They awaken spiritually. They become creators of light in a world too content with shadows. To build character before career is to understand that education is not merely a means to earn a living, but a way to learn how to live rightly. The world often tells students that success lies in acquiring degrees, titles, and recognition. But true education reaches far deeper. It touches the moral core of a person, shaping not only how they think, but who they become. The foundation of every great mind must be a great heart, a heart that values honesty over convenience, service over selfishness, and integrity over achievement. A student who seeks knowledge without moral grounding builds a tower without a foundation. It may stand for a while, but the first strong wind of temptation or pride will bring it down. Therefore, education that does not cultivate character is incomplete, no matter how impressive it appears on the surface. Character is the compass that guides every form of learning. It keeps the mind from becoming enslaved to ambition and the soul from being consumed by greed. A person may learn to build machines, write books, or lead organizations, but if they have not learned to be truthful, kind, and humble, their learning becomes dangerous. Knowledge without virtue is power without direction. It can destroy as easily as it can build. The purpose of education, then, must not only be to teach what is right, but to nurture the will to do what is right. The true test of learning is not found in examinations, but in decisions. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, and one must choose between what is easy and what is good. In those moments, the strength of character becomes the measure of a person's education. Building character begins with small, consistent choices. A student's life is filled with opportunities to practice virtue. In being honest during a test, in showing respect to teachers, in offering help to a struggling classmate. These small acts, repeated daily, shape the soul more powerfully than any lesson taught in theory. The classroom teaches knowledge, but life teaches integrity. When a student learns to act with sincerity in the smallest matters, they prepare themselves for the greater responsibilities of the future. Character is not formed in grand gestures, but in quiet faithfulness. It grows in the soil of discipline, watered by truth and illuminated by self-reflection. Each day of learning is not just an academic exercise, but a chance to refine the conscience. The danger of modern education is that it often celebrates achievement more than goodness. Students are praised for high grades and public success, but rarely for humility, compassion, or honesty. Yet the world is full of intelligent people who lack wisdom, powerful leaders who lack morality, and wealthy individuals who lack peace. This happens when learning outruns character. The true purpose of study is not to polish the mind while neglecting the soul. A brilliant mind without a noble heart becomes a weapon. The student must therefore remember that success is not what they accomplish, but what they become through the process of learning. The greatest education is not about reaching the top, but about remaining upright. When the world tempts you to compromise your values, character is also what sustains a student when knowledge fails. There will be times when circumstances challenge intellect, moments when all the theories and lessons seem to crumble before the harshness of reality. In those moments, character stands as the anchor. It gives the courage to endure disappointment, to face uncertainty with grace, and to rise again after failure. The educated person is not the one who never stumbles, but the one who refuses to stay down. Resilience, humility, patience, and faith are lessons no textbook can teach, but every life must learn. These qualities are the unseen pillars of greatness, and they are built only through trial, reflection, and moral discipline. To build character before career also means understanding that your worth is not determined by what you achieve, but by how you achieve it. In a world that constantly urges competition, it takes courage to remain kind. When others cheat to get ahead, it takes strength to stay honest. When the world measures success by wealth, it takes conviction to measure it by contribution. These are the quiet victories that define a noble life. The student who learns these lessons early will never be lost in the noise of the world's applause. They will carry within them a peace that no failure can destroy and a dignity that no success can inflate. Such a student will become a light in any profession, not because of what they know, but because of who they are. True character is not about perfection, but about direction. It is not the absence of failure, but the presence of integrity that matters. The journey of education will always bring moments of doubt, temptation, and compromise. But it is in those very moments that character is forged. Every difficult choice becomes a teacher, every mistake a mirror, every challenge a test of virtue. The student who embraces these lessons learns something greater than any curriculum could offer. They learn to be authentic, and authenticity in a world built on imitation is a rare and priceless form of wisdom. A person of character transforms the world around them. Their influence is quiet but powerful. They do not need authority to lead or fame to inspire. Their presence alone uplifts others because their integrity commands respect. Whether they become a teacher, a doctor, an artist, or an engineer, their real contribution will not be in their achievements, but in the goodness that flows from their heart. The student who builds character before career becomes a living example that learning is not about being better than others, but about becoming better for others. In every age, the world has needed thinkers with moral strength, individuals who can use knowledge as a tool for compassion, not domination. The greatest danger to any society is not ignorance, but education without virtue. When learning is guided by conscience, knowledge becomes a force for peace and progress. When it is driven by selfish ambition, it becomes a weapon of division and destruction. Therefore, let the student remember that the true purpose of education is to make the mind wise, the heart pure, and the will steadfast. A career may bring comfort, but character brings meaning. A title may impress others, but integrity inspires generations. And in the end, what will endure is not the resume of achievements, but the legacy of a life lived with moral courage and grace. Enduring through struggle is one of the most vital lessons every student must learn on their journey toward greatness. The path of learning, like the path of life, is not meant to be smooth. It is filled with challenges, moments of confusion, and seasons of failure. Yet these are not signs of weakness or inadequacy. They are the very soil in which strength grows. Every great mind has walked through the valley of difficulty before standing on the mountain of understanding. Struggle refines thought, builds character, and teaches humility in a way that comfort never can. To endure is to grow, and to grow is to become more than what you were yesterday. The student who learns to see struggle not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity will discover that even pain can be a teacher when approached with courage and faith. Struggle has a way of revealing what lies beneath the surface of the soul. When everything goes well, it is easy to appear patient, disciplined, and hopeful. But when life becomes heavy, when failure mocks your efforts, when understanding seems distant, when motivation fades, it is then that your true character begins to speak. Struggle strips away pretense and reveals the substance of who you are. It demands honesty. It asks, do you really believe in what you're striving for? Many give up when they face difficulty because they see struggle as a punishment, but the wise see it as a process of refinement. Just as gold is purified by fire, so the mind and heart are purified by challenge. What burns away is not your worth but your weakness. What remains is stronger, clearer, and more enduring than before. For a student, struggle often appears in the form of failure. A poor grade, an unfulfilled goal, or the inability to grasp a difficult concept. But failure is not the end of learning. It is part of it. Each mistake carries a hidden lesson for those willing to look deeply. To fail honestly is better than to succeed by deceit, because truth grows in the soil of humility. Failure humbles the proud and strengthens the persistent. It teaches that growth is not a straight line, but a winding path, marked by both progress and setbacks. The student who learns to see failure as feedback rather than defeat will never truly be lost. They will rise again and again, each time with greater understanding. It is through falling that we learn to walk firmly. It is through struggle that we learn to stand unshaken. Endurance is not about mere survival. It is about perseverance with purpose. It is the quiet strength to continue, even when the outcome is uncertain. Every great achievement was once a moment of perseverance disguised as failure. The scientist who fails 100 experiments learns patience. The writer who revises the same page over and over learns dedication. The athlete who trains in pain learns discipline. The student who continues to study despite confusion learns resilience. These moments of persistence forge a strength that cannot be taught through comfort. Comfort creates dependency. Struggle creates depth. A comfortable life may protect you from pain, but it will also rob you of power. True growth demands the courage to endure difficulty without losing faith in your purpose. Struggle also teaches empathy. When you have known frustration, you understand others who feel defeated. When you have faced hardship, you learn to respect the strength of those who continue despite their pain. Struggle softens the heart, while it strengthens the will. It removes pride and replaces it with compassion. The student who endures struggle gracefully becomes a source of hope for others. Their perseverance becomes a silent lesson that no matter how dark the night, dawn always follows. Those who endure learn that pain is temporary, but the wisdom gained from it lasts forever. Every challenge overcome becomes a piece of strength that no one can take away. There is a mysterious beauty in struggle. It forces the mind to become creative. When the easy path is blocked, the spirit begins to invent new ways forward. Adversity awakens innovation. It sharpens focus and deepens understanding. The student who faces obstacles in learning, whether lack of resources, time, or confidence, develops adaptability. They learn to make the most of what they have. In this way, struggle not only strengthens character, but also expands intelligence. It teaches that success is not about perfect conditions, but about perseverance despite imperfection. Many of the world's most brilliant discoveries and achievements were born from limitation, not abundance. Struggle, therefore, is not a sign of failure, but a signal that growth is taking place. Enduring through struggle also builds faith, not necessarily in religion, but in purpose, in oneself, and in the process of growth. When progress feels invisible, when every effort seems wasted, it takes faith to keep moving forward. This faith does not come from blind optimism, but from experience. The quiet knowledge that every hardship you've survived has made you stronger. The student who endures learns to trust that pain has meaning, that confusion will one day become clarity, and that delay does not mean denial. They begin to see that every struggle is a teacher in disguise, shaping them into someone capable of greater understanding, patience, and humility. There is a profound strength that comes only from enduring what others avoid. When a student learns to stay steady amid pressure, they gain mastery not only of their studies, but of themselves. They no longer fear failure, because they have faced it and lived. They no longer dread difficulty, because they have learned it is temporary. They no longer envy the easy path, because they know it leads nowhere. Endurance teaches the soul to stand upright even in the storm. It is the quiet voice that says, "Keep going," when everything else tells you to stop. It is not a dramatic shout, but a steady whisper. The whisper of strength that will carry you through every test life brings. The truth is that struggle never ends, even after school. Life continues to present new challenges, but those who have learned endurance in their youth carry within them an unbreakable spirit. They no longer see problems as punishments, but as invitations to grow. They understand that ease is pleasant, but effort is transformative. The lessons of endurance go far beyond grades or goals. They shape the kind of human being one becomes. And that is the ultimate victory. Not the absence of struggle, but the ability to endure it with courage, grace, and faith that every challenge is shaping you into the person you were meant to be. The call to imagination is the call to see beyond what is visible, to believe that reality is larger than what the eyes can perceive. It is imagination that transforms learning from a mechanical process into a living experience. Without imagination, education becomes a cage of facts, accurate perhaps but lifeless. With imagination, knowledge becomes an adventure, and every subject becomes a landscape to explore. The student who nurtures imagination learns not only to remember, but to create, not only to observe, but to envision. They understand that what exists was once only imagined by someone bold enough to dream. Every bridge, every poem, every scientific discovery began first as an image in the mind of a dreamer who refused to accept limits. To imagine, therefore, is not to escape reality, but to shape it into something better. Imagination is the bridge between knowledge and creation. Facts alone are like scattered stones. Imagination arranges them into meaning. A student may learn all the laws of physics, all the formulas of mathematics, and all the patterns of history, but without imagination, they remain a collector of symbols rather than a creator of understanding. Imagination takes what is known and connects it to what is possible. It dares to ask, what if? It opens the doors that logic alone keeps closed. Logic defines boundaries, imagination crosses them. The two are not enemies but partners. Reason builds the path, and imagination gives it direction. The greatest minds have always held this balance. They have learned that to imagine is to see truth from another angle, to make the invisible visible and the abstract tangible. The student who develops imagination learns to see lessons not as burdens, but as invitations. A history book becomes not just a record of the past, but a window into human courage and failure. A work of literature becomes not just words on paper, but an echo of the human soul. Even in science and mathematics, imagination breathes life. It is the curiosity that asks why the stars burn, why matter moves, why numbers form patterns. To study with imagination is to study with wonder. It means not simply asking, what happened? But what does it mean? And what could this become? Such questions transform learning from memorization into meditation, from repetition into revelation. Imagination gives wings to the intellect and roots to the soul. Imagination also nurtures empathy. When a student learns to imagine, they learn to step into another's world, to feel another's pain, to see through another's eyes. Every act of kindness begins first in imagination, for one must picture the suffering of others before feeling moved to act. The ability to imagine life beyond one's own experience expands the heart. It turns learning from a personal pursuit into a moral one. The student who imagines becomes capable of compassion, understanding that every human story is part of the same grand narrative. Education without imagination may produce cleverness, but education with imagination produces humanity. It teaches that wisdom is not only knowing what is true, but also feeling what is right. The power of imagination lies in its courage to dream amid uncertainty. To imagine is to risk being misunderstood, for not everyone sees what the dreamer sees. Yet progress has always depended on those willing to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. The student who imagines a new solution, a new perspective, or a new way of living is a quiet revolutionary. Their vision may seem impractical to others at first, but every change in history began as someone's impossible thought. Imagination refuses to bow before the limitations of the present. It insists that tomorrow can be different, not through wishful thinking, but through the creative power of belief. Such belief, when paired with effort, becomes transformation. Imagination also strengthens resilience. When difficulties come, it allows the mind to see beyond despair. A student facing failure who imagines hope has already taken the first step toward overcoming it. When one can picture a better outcome, they begin to act in ways that make it real. Imagination does not deny reality, it expands it. It says, "This is not the end. It is the beginning of something new." Many students give up because they cannot envision a future beyond their current struggle. But those who can imagine see possibilities where others see impossibility. They build hope not from what is visible, but from what is envisioned. It is imagination that turns setbacks into comebacks, confusion into curiosity, and effort into discovery. Imagination must be cultivated deliberately. It grows through silence, reflection, and exploration. In a world filled with noise and distraction, imagination requires the discipline of stillness. A wandering mind is not the same as an imaginative one. True imagination listens deeply, observes quietly, and dares to dream boldly. It grows when a student reads beyond their comfort, when they reflect on life's mysteries, when they question not only textbooks but their own assumptions. To imagine is to be both childlike and wise. Childlike in wonder, wise in reflection. The student who keeps this balance never stops learning, because they never stop seeing the world as a place of possibility. There is also a moral dimension to imagination. It allows students to envision the consequences of their choices, to see how their actions ripple through the lives of others. Without imagination, morality becomes mere rule following. With imagination, it becomes compassion in action. To imagine is to foresee, to understand, and to care. A just society, like a great mind, is built not only on facts but on vision, on the ability to imagine fairness, peace, and goodness even when the world seems harsh. In this sense, imagination is not fantasy, it is foresight. It allows students to see not just what they want to achieve, but who they want to become. The highest form of imagination is not escape but creation. It does not lead one away from truth, but deeper into it. Every new invention, every work of art, every act of courage has been born from an imaginative heart that refused to accept limitation. A student who embraces imagination begins to live creatively in every sense, in thought, in problem solving, in compassion, and in purpose. Their learning becomes not a task but a transformation. They stop asking, "What do I need to know?" and start asking, "What can I create, and how can I make this world better through what I learn?" When imagination joins hands with knowledge, education reaches its highest purpose, not just the mastery of facts, but the creation of a vision that gives those facts meaning. The journey toward greatness is never a straight road. It winds through valleys of failure, mountains of doubt, and deserts of waiting. Every person who has ever accomplished something meaningful has walked through moments when giving up felt easier than holding on. Yet it is precisely in these moments of testing that character is forged. The strength of a person is not measured by how they perform in times of comfort, but by how they rise in times of trial. Growth happens not in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of it. The storm that threatens to break you is often the same one that builds you. It teaches resilience, patience, and the quiet endurance of faith. Pain refines purpose, and delay refines determination. Those who keep moving when the road disappears beneath them learn that perseverance is not an act of stubbornness, but a declaration of belief. Belief that what is ahead is worth the struggle it demands. The secret of those who overcome is not that they avoid hardship, but that they understand its meaning. They see pain not as punishment, but as preparation. Each failure becomes a teacher, each rejection a redirection. When the path is unclear, persistence becomes the compass. To persevere is to continue even when the destination is unseen, to walk by conviction rather than comfort. There are moments when effort feels invisible, when no one notices, no reward comes, and no progress seems visible. Yet, unseen beneath the surface, growth is happening. The seed buried in darkness does not know when it will break through the soil, but it keeps growing anyway. Likewise, those who persevere in silence are the ones whose roots grow deepest. They learn that success is not a sudden bloom, but a patient unfolding. The time spent waiting is never wasted. It strengthens what cannot be seen. Perseverance transforms failure into foundation. Each fall teaches a lesson that becomes part of the structure of success. Those who quit never discover that most obstacles are only temporary tests meant to measure commitment. The world often celebrates results but overlooks endurance. Yet endurance is the hidden force behind every great achievement. It is the quiet decision, made daily, to keep showing up, to keep believing, working, and trying even when there are no signs of victory. Perseverance builds faith not only in the goal, but in oneself. The act of enduring through hardship rewires the mind to see possibility where others see limitation. When one learns to persist through small difficulties, they develop the strength to face greater ones with courage. There are two kinds of strength: the strength that fights battles and the strength that endures them. The first is loud and visible. The second is silent and unseen. Perseverance belongs to the latter. It does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Try again tomorrow." It is the calm within the chaos, the steady rhythm that continues when enthusiasm fades. True perseverance is not born from motivation, but from conviction. Motivation depends on mood. Conviction depends on purpose. When the fire of excitement dies, purpose becomes the fuel that keeps one moving forward. The student, the dreamer, the leader, all must learn this. Greatness is not built in moments of applause, but in hours of persistence when no one is watching. The willingness to continue without recognition is the mark of a soul that understands the deeper meaning of growth. Perseverance also teaches humility. It reminds us that control is not absolute, that progress takes time, and that strength comes not from domination, but from endurance. Those who persevere learn to bend without breaking. They face failure not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Every setback becomes an opportunity to grow in patience, to refine strategy, and to rediscover passion. The process of perseverance often feels slow and painful, yet it is the slowness that shapes depth. Easy victories build pride, difficult ones build strength. Through perseverance, one learns that life's delays are not denials but detours, guiding us toward maturity and mastery. What feels like loss in the moment often becomes the foundation of wisdom later. The heart of perseverance lies in faith, faith that every step, no matter how small, is leading somewhere meaningful. It is the belief that purpose does not vanish in adversity, but is clarified by it. Faith and perseverance walk hand in hand. Without faith, perseverance feels empty. Without perseverance, faith remains untested. Together, they create an unstoppable force. Those who trust the process find peace even in uncertainty. They realize that progress is not always visible, but is always occurring. The sculptor cannot see the beauty of the statue until much of the stone has been chipped away, and yet the act of chiseling continues. Likewise, the one who perseveres through difficulty learns to find purpose even in pain, knowing that something is being shaped within them, something greater, stronger, and more enduring than before. Perseverance is also the art of consistency. Greatness is not achieved through one extraordinary effort, but through countless ordinary ones. It is built in the daily choices, to rise when tired, to try when afraid, to hope when uncertain. Every small act of persistence accumulates into strength. The greatest mistake is believing that progress must always be visible or dramatic. True growth is quiet. The tree grows silently, the mountain erodes slowly. In the same way, transformation unfolds gradually, often unnoticed, until one day the change becomes undeniable. Perseverance teaches patience, and patience teaches trust. Trust in timing, in purpose, and in one's own potential. There will always be moments when perseverance feels futile, when everything inside cries out for rest or surrender. But it is in those exact moments that persistence carries the most power. When the mind says, "I can't," but the heart whispers, "Just once more," that is the moment when resilience is born. Every act of endurance builds the habit of strength. Over time, this habit becomes part of one's character, unshakable, unbreakable, unafraid. Perseverance changes identity. It turns the struggler into the survivor, the dreamer into the doer. What once seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable, because the person has learned not just to hope for results, but to trust in their capacity to endure. Ultimately, perseverance is not about reaching the end. It is about becoming someone who cannot be defeated by the journey. Each trial refines the soul and polishes the spirit until the individual discovers that strength is not about avoiding pain, but about transforming it. To persevere is to accept that every difficulty carries within it the seed of destiny. It is to believe that, no matter how long the night, dawn is inevitable. The road may be long, the progress slow, but every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory in itself. Those who keep walking, even when weary, find that perseverance does not merely lead to greatness, it creates it.